Yeah, right, right over. Yeah, Tashma. So we're in the middle of a question. The question was that these bulls and he goats that get burnt, called the Parim Hanisrafim, whether it's the Kohen Gadol made an error and you have to bring that bull, or the community made an error and you have to bring the bull, or the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur has the bull and the he goat. All these things we wanted to know if their meat is left overnight, does that invalidate? Yes or no? Maybe only meat that's going to be consumed has the invalidation of being left overnight. This meat does not get consumed, it gets burnt. It does not have that invalidation, or maybe not, or maybe that invalidation applies across the board. So that was our question. Says the Brisa, Tashma. The Tani Levi says, She'ira ben Psul b'yitziyasan. Earlier we had a Brisa that talks about when it gets an invalidation after it exits the courtyard. So the Gemara before suggested something, now it's suggesting Ma'i Lavlina, what kind of invalidation is that? Maybe it's invalidation of being left overnight. And if that's the invalidation, so then that's going to be an answer to our question. Says the Gemara, no, it's not talking about that invalidation, rather lo psul puma upsul yitzia. There's these three invalidations could be any of the possibilities. It could be either left overnight, which we're rejecting. It could be it left the courtyard and became impure, or just leaving the courtyard itself might be an invalidation. The fact that it left the courtyard. So, yeah, let's say it left. Yeah, so left before its appointed time. So you have no proof. Basically, you have no proof that that any of these burnt animals, their meat, if it's left overnight, is going to be invalid. Okay, now, by Rabbi Gleizer, same case of the burnt bulls. Yitzia, does leaving the area before its appointed time, so Rashi says there's a time, let's say, before the throwing of the blood. I'm just thinking out loud. These burnt bulls, so you bring them out and burn them. Oh, but I guess right, they're slaughtered and everything is done inside, and you carry it out and you burn them. So let's say it exits before the throwing of the blood. So usually you can't leave the courtyard because that's called an invalidation of leaving the courtyard. But in this case, these animals are leaving anyway. It's just a matter of time. You need to bring them outside the three camps to burn them. They're unique burning. There are only 4 unique sacrifices that get burned, fully consumed outside the 3 camps. However, you preempted it. You took it out before its blood was thrown. So once again, it's like a middle case. How do you view that? Do you view that as it should be invalid because right now it's not the right time? Or you say, no, it's going to end up leaving anyways, so it's not as severe as this prohibition requires. So that's the question. So so says more, what do you ask? Amar Yirmiyah bar Abba, Aliba the Manamra Daino, he gives Manalates, Miamrinon, Hani Mili Bebasser, the angel of Alates, Chova, Ava Hani, the Sofa Lates, Chova, Lo. Dilma Hakanami, Lo, he gives Manalates. So there's a debate by Kachim Kalam, by the lower level sanctity sacrifices, which their meat is allowed to leave after everything happens. You can consume the meat, outside the 3 camps. So in that case, if you remove it before its right time, before Zrika, so is that a violation or not? Since it's going to end up leaving anyway. So according to the opinion that says that it is a violation, maybe that's only according to the one that invalidates the meat of the kachim column, the lower level sanctity sacrifices, that exits before its time. So according to him, maybe you'll say that's only honey busser, that it's only meat. That's only invalid because meat doesn't have to leave. So meaning a lower level sanctity, let's say a peace offering. So the meat So you preempted it. The guy removed it from the courtyard before its appointed time, before the blood was thrown. You take the carcass and you bring it out. So there, the meat does not have to leave. You could, after all the dust settles, you could eat it outside, but you don't have to. So therefore, if you preempt it, it's going to be invalid. But maybe this case is going to be different because you have to bring it outside the three camps. So maybe it's not going to have that same violation. Or you'll say, no, the primary, the determining factor is, did you preempt it, yes or no? So when you have a shlomim offering, a peace offering, that you preempted it and you brought it out before its appointed time, how do you view that? On the one hand, you preempted it, so you violated, you're over the violation. On the other hand, maybe it's only meat which has no obligation to be brought outside. But this carcass of the burnt bull that's going to be burnt outside anyways, it's on its way out. It's heading in that direction. Its GPS says outside the courtyard. So you preempted that, maybe that won't have the same violation. That's the question. We're going to try to bring a proof from the Brisa earlier and reject it. Tashma Levi shir about psul b'yitziaso. Some kind of invalidation happens after you exited. Are we not talking about my lap psul yitzia, lap psul tu psul? Are we not talking about the invalidation of exiting and preempting, which would then be a clear Brisa supporting our answering our question? Says Gemara, no. That Brisa that says that there is an invalidation when you exited, it could be one of three things. It could be preempting, it could be contamination, or it could be staying overnight. So those words themselves are not definitive. Therefore, we can't definitively answer our question. That question remains. Now here it's interesting. So here, now you're on your way out. You finish the whole procedure. You got to remove this bull or the he-goat outside the three camps and burn it. So now, the people that carry it, the Mishnah told us, they get contaminated. The carriers and the burners get contaminated. So now, what happens if the animal is partially in and partially out? How do you view that? So, in this case, it's yotzo rubo b'miyut aver. So, meaning you have a limb of the animal. I don't know, let's pick a limb. What limb is your favorite limb on a bull, Jules? Your favorite limb on a bull? So, I don't know. The femur? Yeah, maybe the femur. So the part of the limb, only a small part of the limb has been removed from the courtyard. The majority of that limb is still inside. However, this little part of the limb that's now outside the courtyard, when you look at the total of the animal, it puts it over the top. So the animal is 49% out of the courtyard. The part of the limb is an extra 2%. Now the animal is 51% out of the courtyard. However, the limb itself is only, whatever it is, it's only 3 inches out of a foot-long limb. So it's only a minority of the limb, but it puts the animal over the top for the majority, right? You wonder what they did when they were born. There's questions like this. Yeah. So before the social media and video game era. So you have to think. So how do you view it? Yeah, great question. Next time you're in Seifa, you can ask the guy in front of you, what do you think about this? Yeah, how do you view it? Do you go with the small part of the limb? You look at the big part of the limb. Yeah, listen, most of the limb has not exited. So you don't view even a small part as exited, right? At what point is a guy exiting the building? At what point do you consider him outside the building? So we would say until he's fully outside, because Akias locked the door. But here, in this case, when do you consider something fully out or partially out? So you have a part of a limb, which most of the limb is inside. So maybe that's how you view it. The hollow nafkale. Well, and most of the limb is still inside the courtyard. So maybe the animal's only at 49% outside. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, Odilma basaruba de behema shadina. You look at the bigger picture. At the bigger picture, this little limb, the little part of a limb, puts it over the top, and therefore it's like 51% removed, and therefore it's now removed from the courtyard. Once it's removed from the courtyard, it can cause impurity to the people that are carrying it. So, says the Gemara, okay, that question, that's obvious. You look at a limb, you go after the limb itself, not after the animal. look at the limb. So you don't count part of a limb in connection with a bigger animal if most of the limb is still inside the courtyard. Limbs come together. Yeah, you don't view the part of the femur, a third of the femur goes together, it's one unit. So what is the question? An animal that's, I think it's a 50-50, so sorry, go the other way. You have a majority of the limb that's outside the courtyard. Minority of the limb is inside the courtyard. And that one's so yeah, so with majority of the limb is outside. Right now, the animal's at 50-50. It's not inside, it's not outside. If you take the minority, the rest of the limb, the minor part of the limb, so now how do you view it? Do you say hi muted the aver next page? Buster rove aver shadinale? It goes after most of the limb. And if that's true, so now the animal's at 51% out, and it'll cause impurity. The handafakle. Odilma, no, you take since most of the limb is outside, and the small part of the limb is inside, so maybe Odilma Basar Behema, it goes after the majority of the animal, and therefore it will not put it over the top to 51%. And that we say taken. Now that's interesting. That on the one hand, we just said that the limbs come together as units, but that was only when the minority puts it over the top. When the majority is already outside, so there you could split it. You could say that the majority is outside, it's 49%, but the smaller limb will go after the animal. And since the animal, you can't say the animal's outside, 50-50. So you'll view it as inside still, and therefore it's not going to cause contamination. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Huna Masnila. So now he taught this question in terms of the people. So let's say you have a number of people carrying the carcass. So Begavre Metaskinan, we're talking about Begavre Metaskinan, but we're talking about people that are involved in the carrying of the carcass. So Chamisha Bnei Adam, there are 5 people carrying the carcass. V'nafkut lata, and 3 of them have exited. And 2 of them have remained inside. So now, how do you view it? My basar rov is askenaz linan, or basar behema linan. Do you go after the majority of the people involved? So, since 3 are outside, so then you view it as like even the 2 that are inside will still get impure, or do you say no? You go after the majority of the animal, and since the majority of the animal is still inside, just because most of the people are outside, that's not going to cause invalidation on the other 2. That'd be a novel. That's more novel that that the animal that you should impurify the people, even if most of the animal is not outside. Only part of it is outside. Yeah. Yeah. So that we say teku. That's also unresolved. That's right. That's right. No conclusive. Yeah. Okay, looks like Tosa asked my question. If most of the animals inside, who cares that most people are outside? If most animals inside, everyone's for sure pure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Figure out what his answer is. Yeah, fine. So, Bayu Rebbe Lazar. So now, more questions regarding these bronze bulls. So, Haram Usiirim Hanisrafim, bulls and the he-goats that get burned, Shiyatsu v'chazru, is also interesting. They leave the courtyard and come back in. So then once they leave the courtyard, they cause impurity. But now they came back in. So, Mahu, what's the halakha? Do they have a status of emitting impurity? Because look, they left on the one hand, but they're here. So at first, this is very hard to understand because once they're impure, how do they take that out of them? How does going back in remove that? I think I saw the footnote explain something like this in the following way, that basically the real thing that causes contamination is the burning of the animal. I think the way I understood it, maybe I'll say it differently, but carrying the animal is like an extension of burning it. You can still view the carriers as people that are involved in the burning process, but that's only as much as the animal goes and gets burnt. If the animal goes back inside the courtyard, so now the ones carrying the animal outside the courtyard are not viewed anymore as the ones that were involved in the burning, because the animal was never burned. It came back in. So therefore, I don't know if the impurity is like in limbo state. I don't know exactly, how, but that's how you would view it. So, Rashi says 5 words. Rashi says, once animal goes back, it's like as if it never went out. So the question is, why doesn't it cause impurity? So maybe it's because you don't view it as the people as part of the burning process now, because the animal never went to get burnt. So Mirmina came in the Nafkilahu, Itamalahu, Dilma came in the Hadar. Since they left, you get impure. Too bad. No, but you came back. So maybe it's like you were never left in the first place. Meaning the Gemara never entertains that you're actually pure and it gets removed. Removed is a purification process. The only suggestion it entertains is maybe it's as if you were never impure in the first place. Now, why would we view you as never impure in the first place? Potential answer is because the impurity really stems from the burning of the bull. Since this went and then we went back, and now Waze has to recalculate, right? It turns back the other way. So that's as if you never really were involved in the burning. What'd you do? You took it out and then you brought it back in. So you tell the kid to go clean your room. He walks in and walks out. You go look at, is the room clean? No. So that's the question. Al Rabbi Abba Bar Mamel, let's try to bring up our Mishnah and then reject it. Tashma. Hayusovlin, they would carry the animal also on a bit motos, harishonim. These big logs, these big sticks. Yatsu chutz l'chomas hazara, if they left the walls of the courtyard, the first chaver left. And the chaver in the back, they have not left the courtyard yet. So then harishonim sheyatsu chutz l'chomas hazara, mitam and begadim. The ones that left originally outside the wall of the Azara, mitam and begadim, their clothing gets impure. The achronim, the one that are in the back carrying the carcass, if they're still inside the courtyard, they are not impure yet. Ein mitam and begadim. Imagine that you could be one bull and it impurifies that group, but that group still remains pure. So, okay.
Like going through a car
wash. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good example. Yeah. It's probably a little cheaper to carry the bull, but yeah. So with a clothing wash after.
The bull that we're carrying, it was never put on the altar.
No, I think it went through the shechita. It has limbs and blood. The blood was thrown. It has the sacrificial parts of it that are not that get put up on the altar. But the meat of it, the main meat of it, that's carried and burnt outside. Yeah, good question. So now that's our mission. So it says the Gemara, says that the Gemara, an interesting suggestion. If you want to entertain the thought that once people leave the courtyard, they become impure, even if the animal comes back in, if you go with that part of the question, so then the Isagata came in the Nafkilahu itmu, so Hanach Igavai Litama. Well then, if you're going to tell me that once the animal goes out and comes back in, it's going to be impure, it'll still cause impurity to the people. So then these people that are inside the courtyard that haven't exited yet, so the fact that part of the animal is outside and it impurifies those people, it should impurify these people too. So why does it not impurify these people? It must be because they're still inside. They never left. So if an animal that goes out and comes back in, so this should answer our question that these people that never left, they're pure. They remain pure. So too, if the animal leaves and comes back in, it should also not cause impurity. Yeah. Because the whole idea that it's going to cause impurity is if it's considered that it left. When is it considered that it left already? So in our Mishnah, it sounds like as long as people are still holding it and they're inside, it's not considered that it left. Well then, so too if the animal is now back inside the courtyard, right now it also hasn't left. So that must be the answer. To that we say, Omer Ravina v'Tizbra, is that logical? The pasuk is pretty explicit. You have to leave the machane, you have to leave the courtyard. So the people in our Mishnah, they never left. They're always inside. So they can't become impure. But that's why they remain pure. But our case is where the people actually left and came back in. So once you leave and come back in, that's a different question. If you never left, though, the Torah says you have to leave to become impure, and here you never left. So therefore, you can't bring a proof from this case to our case. Yeah. Ella Rabbi Elazar Heichi B'Hila. So Rabbi Elazar, what case was he really asking about? He was asking about the following: Kevan dinakiti la be'bulkasi. So this is interesting. The animal, I think, is inside, and the people are outside, and they have large sticks that they're using to bring the animal back out, or to bring the animal out. So yeah, so the animal goes out and comes back in, and then there are people that are outside that are holding like these sticks, these sticks with hooks or something to get the animal back out. So, do we say that since the animal left the courtyard, so anybody who is involved with it is forever going to be impure, or do you say that since the animal now is inside the courtyard, the people that are now trying to get it out are not going to be are not yet impure until the animal actually leaves? Just 1 second. Yeah, so an animal that goes out and goes back in, it's not going to contaminate the new people that come in contact with it or that are. However, the people that already took it out, and now the animal ran back in, and now they're involved in bringing it back out. So that's our question. Those people, at what point do you consider the animal being brought out? Is it out? Once it's out, and therefore you'll always be impure? Or do you say, no, it's only out once it's out? In this case, the animal's back in the courtyard, and therefore you can't view it as fully out, and therefore they're not going to be considered impure. Maybe it ran back in, huh? That's what I was thinking.
It was there. Uh-huh.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. How to get back in? Why'd they bring it back in? I don't know. They made a mistake. They went the wrong way. His shoe was untied.
One-way street.
He forgot his phone inside. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. Here comes the purity and impurity part, which is a little complicated. So let's see. Okay. Tana Rabbanan, says the Brisa, parim, bulls, or para, or a cow, or parim upara v'sir mishaleach. So these things that end up getting burnt, the bulls, the paraduma, the he-goat on Yom Kippur. So these cases, the rule is hasorfan, the one who burns them, the hamotzion, the one who removes them. What happens? Mitame begadim, the clothing becomes impure. However, the vehein atzman ein mitamen begadim. The actual paradumar, the actual bulls that are burnt, they don't impurify someone who touches them. It's specifically someone who's involved in removing them and burning them. But a guy who touches them doesn't become impure. They don't have a level of contamination to impurify the person. Specific rule by the guy that's carrying them and the person who's burning them. However, they do have a lower level of impurity. So therefore, aval mitam and ochlin umashkin, right? A person to impurify a person and clothing and vessels, adamu kelim is a higher level of tumah. So a person that's on a lower level of tumah can only impurify food and drink, right? One's an avatuma can make something a rishon l'tumah. It can make a person or vessels a rishon l'tumah. If you're a rishon l'tumah, then you can only make food and water the sheni l'tumah. So these animals are, if you're not involved in the burning or the removing process, so then they're not going to purify the person or the clothing, but they'll impurify food or drink. That's Divrei Reb Meir. This is the opinion of Reb Meir. We're going to bring scriptural sources for this in a second. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. They have a lower level of sanctity. They're a lower level of impurity, sorry. They only impurify if you touch them, water and food and water, not person and clothing. The Chachamim say, Parim, Para, the Paraduma. Parim, one of the bulls that gets burned, either the Kohen Gadol, mistaken halachic ruling, or the head of the court that the whole community follows, his mistaken ruling, or Yom Kippur bull, all of these are mitamin ochlun umashkin. They say that it will impurify food and drink. That's the same. However, the seir hamishtaleach, the he-goat that's thrown off the cliff on Yom Kippur, eino mitame, that's not going to impurify. Why? Shehu chai, v'achai eino mitame ochlun umashkin. A live animal is not going to impurify food and drink. Now, Rav Meir said, Rav Meir, Rav Meir says that the person who sends the he-goat flying, who throws off the cliff, his clothing will become impure. The Chacham, okay, let's see. Is that point disputed? Okay, a certain time ago, he asked every time, it sounds like Chachamim are saying that the he-goat, until it's dead, is not contaminated at all. And Rav Meir said that it does contaminate. It contaminates the person's clothing. The one who's throwing it off, it contaminates. So, okay, so let's see. So now, and a live animal cannot contaminate the food or drink. Okay, so now let's figure out where exactly Rabbi Meir and the Chum argue. So they argue by, can these animals that are getting burnt, can they impurify food and drink? Rabbi Meir says no. The Chum say yes. So now, Rabbi Meir is very good. Why? Because it fits the opinion of Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, the Academy of Rabbi Shmuel, who says the following: the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, it says, "I'll call zerua on every seed that gets every seed that gets moist
on any edible seed before."
Yes, any edible seed. Basically, the rule is that when you have seeds, foods, you have to get wet for it to contract tumah. So your apple is not going to just contract tumah by touching something. It has to be moist. So I'll call zera zerua mazrayim, just like seeds. She'ein sofoli tame tumah chamur. This can be the key word. Seeds are never going to have the highest level of impurity, which means they'll never be able to impurify a person or vessels or their clothing. Never. It's only going to be able to become a lower level of impurity. And yet, what do you see? V'tzrichin hechsher. They need a preparatory step to enable them to become impure. So they have a leniency. They'll never become so severe that they'll be able to impurify on a first degree level of impurity. And yet they need a prereq to become impure, which they have to be moist. So says Rav Meir, Af kol she'ein sofan litame tuma chamura, tzarichin hechsher. So to anything which is not going to end up having a high status, a severe status, a level 1 status of impurity, will need a preparatory step to enable them to become impure. That's coming to exclude Yatzda Nevelas of Tahor, a carcass of a bird. A carcass of a bird, it was never shechted properly. That is going to be Yatzda Nevelas of Tahor. This coming to exclude the carcass of a kosher bird. At the end of the day, if you swallow a piece of that bird, it will have a high level of impurity because it's going to impurify you. The bird only contaminates when you swallow it. But once you swallow it, you and your clothing become impure. So, and yet, the Ein Tzricha Hechsher, that does not need any preparatory step to cause impurity. You don't have to get it moist. So now, according to Reb Meir, who says that these animals will contaminate, these bulls will contaminate food and drink, it's very good because these are all things that right now they're not a high level of impurity, but once they're burnt or once they're a carcass, so then they will be a high level of impurity. So right now it's considered like something which will have a high status of impurity. Therefore, even right now, without any preparatory steps, it doesn't need to be moist at all. It will cause impurity to food or drink. Yeah. So now these bulls and paraduma, when do we see that they have a high level of impurity? When the person who carries them or the person who burns them, they end up impurifying the one who burns them. So take your bull that the Kohen Gadol or the community followed an erroneous ruling. That bull has a special rule. You have to go and burn it outside the temple. So the people who are carrying it and the people who are burning it, they will become impure themselves. Right now, the meat is sitting there and someone touches it. So they're not going to become impure. But now your food touches it or your drink touches it. Does that cause impurity? So says Rav Meir, I go like Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael said that things that will end up having a high level of impurity, such as a case where it will impurify a person, even right now they can cause impurity. So therefore, these things will cause impurity. And therefore, they don't need a preparatory step. So they don't need to be moist or anything like that. They themselves will cause impurity. Now, Rashi adds in, not only that, but they'll even impurify when they're alive. Even though live animals don't impurify, a live animal that will end up being impure, like this bull, which is chosen, so even that will cause impurity, Rashi says. So that's all good, and that's why the steer ha'azazel, the animal that gets thrown off the cliff, the higan on Yom Kippur, even when it's alive, it will cause impurity. Because it's going to be something which once it gets off the cliff and it dies, it will cause impurity. So even right now, it will cause impurity. That's Rav Meir, fitting nicely with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Okay. Now, what about the Chachamim? Ela l'Rabbanan, according to the Rabbanan, where do you stand in this? So let's speak it out. I islahu, if you agree the time of Rabbi Yishmael, so then afilu sira mishtaleh, then you should agree that the he-goat, even while it's alive, will cause impurity. But you don't say that. So what are you going to tell me? I disagree with Rabbi Yishmael. So ilesle, if you disagree with Rabbi Yishmael, so then afilu para uparim minalahu. So, but if you disagree with Rabbi Yishmael, then how come you, Chachamim, say that, how come you rabbis agree, Chachamim say, that they'll cause impurity on food or drink? Yeah, Chachamim say the paraduma or the bull that's going to be burnt, it's going to cause impurity. So it's like, why are you causing impurity? Make up your mind. Either you wait till it actually causes a high level of impurity, which only is the people that are carrying it. So if that's true, so then if food touches it, it should not become impure. And if you agree to Rav Meir, so then even the seer, the higo that throw off the cliff, that should cause impurity when it's alive. So make up your mind. Do you agree with the concept that things that will be able to cause high levels of impurity even right now can do that? If that's true, then the higo that's alive should cause impurity. But you don't say that. You disagree with that. And if you'll tell me that you have to wait till you're actually impurifying a person, well, how come these bulls that are burnt, if food or drink touches it, it becomes impure? Why would it become impure? Because it will cause impurity, and the higo also should cause impurity. So you got to make up your mind. So that we answer, ki asar avdimi amar, no. They just mean like this. Amri b'ma'arava tzrichin hechsher tuma mimakom acher. It just means that according to the Rabbanan, what Rabbi Shmuel was saying was anything which is not going to have a high level of impurity needs to have the preparatory step of becoming moist before it could become impure. So then when a sheretz, the creepy crawly touches it, or a carcass touches it, it'll cause it to be impure. However, something which will have a high level of impurity later on, that does not need to have any preparatory step. It'll cause impurity on its own. However, it needs to at least be fitting to cause impurity. So when the animal is dead, that at least is fitting to cause impurity, because that's already when they're going to carry it, it'll cause impurity. But as long as the animal is alive, right now, it's not going to cause any impurity, because we never found live animals that are going to cause impurity. So on the one hand, they agree. They agree that an animal like the bull that's dead. So the bull that's dead, so right now, it will cause a high level of impurity. So, and it's fitting for it. It just hasn't been carried yet. So that they agree can contaminate food and drink. However, a live animal cannot contaminate. It's not even fitting to contaminate anybody right now. So that they're going to disagree and say that's why the he-goat is not going to cause any contamination. Rabbi Meir understood Rabbi Shmuel to say anything that's going to end up being a high level of impurity on its own right now will cause impurity, even a live animal. The Chachamim are saying, no, Rabbi Shmuel didn't go that far. He's just saying that things that are not going to be a high level of impurity need a preparatory step of becoming moist. But things that are fitting to cause impurity, but they have to be fitting, that they on their own can give over impurity, and they don't have to be moist. But it has to be fitting, and therefore a live animal is not fitting. So that's the debate. So they both agree to Rabbi Shmuel. The question is, how far do you take Rabbi Shmuel? Yeah. One second. Right. So basically, the two ways to learn Rabbi Shmuel are, there's definitely a difference in categories. Everyone agrees. Things that are going to end up causing a high level of impurity and things that are not. The first understanding of the way Rabbi Meir understood it was things that will never become a high level of impurity don't need any preparatory steps. Sorry, things that will never become high level of impurity need a preparatory step to become impure. And things that will cause a high level of impurity never need any preparatory step. It just causes impurity. The Chachamim say everyone needs a preparatory step. The question is, does it come from yourself or it comes from the outside? So if you're something that will never be able to give off a high level of impurity, then you need to have a preparatory step from somewhere else. You have to get liquid from somewhere else. If you're something which can cause a high level of impurity, so then as long as you are fitting to cause impurity, that is your preparatory step. So as long as you're a piece of meat now, not alive, you are fitting to cause impurity. But if you're alive, right now you're not fitting at all to cause impurity, and therefore they're going to argue and say that the higot on Yom Kippur until it's dead is not going to cause impurity, or any of the bulls won't cause impurity either. Okay. Now, getting more nitty gritty in these opinions. Boy Rebbe Lazar, Harim han Usiirim, the bulls that get burned, and the higos that get burned. Mahu sheyitamu ochlin umashkim bifnim kibachutz. When they're inside the courtyard, how do you view them? Can they contaminate food and drink inside the courtyard the same way they could do it when they're outside? Because when they're outside, they're now fitting to cause contamination to a person. Remember, these things, when you're carrying them, they cause impurity. We're saying now that they can even cause impurity to food and drink. Where? Only when they're outside and they're able to cause impurity to people carrying them, or even when they're inside, since they will be able to cause impurity. How do you view it? So, do you say mi bafnim kibachutz, and therefore you say mechusar yitzia ki mechusar ma'asadami? Hello? Do you say that being inside is akin to lacking an act? So let's say you have an animal that hasn't been slaughtered yet, right? So that's obviously not going to cause impurity. You have to do an act to have it dead, and then it'll cause impurity. When you have these animals, how much do we view exiting? When you exit, you cause impurity. That exiting, so it's not such a significant act like slaughtering, it's just walking. Is that viewed like a very significant act that has to be done, and until you do it, it won't cause any impurity? Or you say no, that we don't view just exiting like such a big act to do, and therefore it's only a few steps. So therefore, right now, even though it hasn't exited yet, but it already has the status of something which is able to cause impurity. So, yes or no? How do you view walking out of the courtyard? Like a big act, and therefore you're lacking a big act, and therefore you're not going to cause impurity? Or no, walking is not such a big act to do, and therefore it will be something which, even right now, you're going to be able to cause impurity, at least to the food and the drink. So Basar the Bali Hadar Pashta, after we asked, we answered that mechusar yitzia is kim mechusar ma'asadami. The mechusar yitzia, leaving, is the same as like slaughtering by other animals. For this animal, its exiting is akin to another animal slaughtering. It really is considered a very big act, a very significant act. Until you've done that act, it's not ready to cause any contamination to food or drinks. Yeah, and therefore right now, if it hasn't exited yet, it's not going to cause impurity, even to the food or the drink. Okay. Yeah. So, fine. Now, Bo Mine, Rabbi Abba bar Shmuel, Rabbi Chia bar Abba. So, here we get a little nitty gritty in the world of Rabbi Meir. Now, Rabbi Abba bar Shmuel asked Rabbi Chia bar Abba, a nevelas oftah. So, a carcass of a kosher bird is our example of something which right now does not cause impurity, at least to a person. When you swallow it, it will. So, such an animal is what Rav Meir said is something which right now it has a status of an animal of a bird that will be on a high level of impurity, and once it's swallowed by you, all you need is a kazayas, an olive's worth, to contaminate you. So now, according to Rav Meir, how much do you need of this bird to cause contamination to food and drink? Do you need a kazayas, which is what you need when it's in your body, or generally what you need is an egg's worth for a nevela to cause contamination. But when you swallow this animal, you only need a kazayas to contaminate you. Generally, in the general world, it'll take a egg's worth. In this specific bird, when it's in your throat, going down your digestive system, it's only going to be an olive's worth. So, Rabbi Meir, who is much more lenient and says basically anything that right now will eventually become impure has all the statuses of it as if it's already there. So since it's there in your throat, only the kazayas, right now, is that enough to cause contamination by touching food or drink? Yes or no? So that's that. So now, Maushi Tame Bekazai. So it says the Gemara, let's qualify the question. One is just sitting on the ground. It's interesting. Rabbi Meir holds something that will eventually be a high level, will give off a high level of contamination, has all those qualifications right now. A kosher bird that wasn't slaughtered properly is sitting on the ground. So if it's on the ground, that's not something which you can see right now as causing future contamination. Why not? Because who says someone's going to eat it? Most people might just walk by and never touch it. Or you drive down the street, you see a bird that's just a dead carcass. We don't assume that bird is like future dinner for the family, right? Right. So that is not considered something which right now is going to have the qualifications of this stringent level of impurity, because we can't view it right now as something which will eventually be down your throat. So therefore, that's not going to cause any impurity. That's not what our question is. So, if it's in your mouth, well then, for sure, that's not our question either, because that's for sure only a kazayas. What's our question? Kiti bailach, dinakit le biyade. You're holding the kosher bird in your hand, and you're holding the kosher bird in your hands, and it was not slaughtered properly. So it's a nevela, and nevela is ovtahor. You're holding it now. Clearly, we see you about to eat it, but you have not eaten it yet. So right now, before you eat it, you do a stretch, and it hits the food. Is that food going to be impure? This is you're only holding an olive's worth of the animal, or only so an olive's worth is not enough to contaminate the food. You need an egg's worth. But when you put it down your throat, it would be enough to contaminate you. So right now, do you view this olive's worth as so stringent, like it's already down your throat, and even right now it's enough to cause contamination, or not? Yeah. So that's the question. So on this you say Happy New Year's, right? So this is the fun part. So kiti bailach, the nagale biyade, so now how do you view it? Now, what's lacking it from going into your mouth? Just distance, right? Just bringing it closer. So do you view this as a significant act, just to bring it closer, or not? Mechusser kreva kemechusser ma'asnami. In this case, do you view just the bringing it into your mouth like a very significant act, and until you do it, you're lacking that very significant act, and therefore you should need the egg's worth to contaminate? Oh, well, nah, it's just putting it in, not so hard to do. It's not so significant, and therefore right now you already view it as it has a very stringent level of impurity. So that was the question. And then we say, turning the page, mechusser kreva is lav ke mechusser ma'asnami. Just bringing it closer is not like you're lacking a big act, and therefore even an olive's worth will contaminate the food and drink, because you view it right now as if it's down your throat already. It has that level of severity. So, yeah. So I always took these things on the positive. That when you're judging a person, you don't judge them right now, or a kid. You judge them what they could be. So right now I can't do something. You're right. But if I had the right environment, could I? If yeah, then the potential is there. Just it hasn't come to actualization yet. So we're saying halachically the same thing. The potential is right there. It's about to go down your throat, and that's going to be very severe. Now, how do you view something? You view it after the actual, right now, view it right now, or view it on its, like the Ben Surim, or like the wayward son, right? He's judged at the end already. You're someone who is going to mess up terribly. Therefore, so, yeah, okay. So, Asa, we're going to bring the first Mishnah in Taharos. That says, so for the carcass kosher bird people who are interested, so the first Mishnah of Taharos will get you more excited. Why? It says, 13 things were stated about the carcass of a kosher bird. Not just 13 things. This is one of them. Okay, so one of the qualifications is you have to have a thought that you're going to eat this. The ain tzricha hechsher, you don't need to have any prereq to make it moist for it to cause contamination. Umetame tumas ochen b'kebetza, and it causes impurity when it's a egg's worth. Well, hold on. We have a Mishnah, it's an anonymous Mishnah that says it needs an egg's worth to contaminate the food. So now Rashi points out that we're talking about where you're holding it, you're having a thought to eat it or to not eat it. Obviously, you're holding it; it's not lying on the ground. So now, if you have a thought to eat it, you don't need a prereq of it to get moist. It will contaminate the food now with an egg's worth. Oh, that should answer our question. Isn't that what we just said, that it only needs an olive's worth to contaminate according to Rav Meir? But now we're saying, no, it looks, a Mishnah said you need an egg's worth. Ma'i lav Rav Meir he? No, lo Rabbanani. It's actually the opinion of the rabbis. The rabbis always held that they don't go so far to say that every single thing is viewed like it's going to be impure. So like it has a stringent level of impurity. The rabbis always needed an egg's amount. So the Mishnah really reflects the view of the rabbis. But according to Rav Meir, it could still be only an olive's worth to contaminate the food and drink. Says the Gemara, but how can you say that? It needs a thought, I'm going to eat it. It does not need any prereq to make it moist. Who's the one who says that? Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is the one who says that right now you can already view it like it's going to be very severe. Therefore, you don't need any prereq to make it moist. Right now, it's going to have all the severities of when it's already in your throat. So you don't have to make it moist. That's the opinion of Rav Meir. So how can you say the Mishnah's the Rabbanon? They say it's too far removed yet. It would need a prereq to contaminate. Rav Meir not. So if you say midrasha, that first line's Rav Meir, so yeah, with the Rav Meir, say, but I'm Rav Meir. If the first line's Rav Meir, for sure the next one's also Rav Meir. Stay consistent. Says the Gemara, no, you can get out of that. Mide area, you have to say that. Is it really like that? Hakadisa, vakadisa. The first line that says you don't need the stringency of being contaminated of a prereq of making it moist, that's Rav Meir. The next part that says it needs an egg's worth to contaminate the food is the opinion of the Rabbanan. The Mishnah splits in its authorship. But look at the very end. That when you do shchita or you do malika on it, it's going to purify it from its treifa status, from it being impure. Mitumasa. Who's the one that says that shchita or malika, shechting it or malika or doing malika on it will purify it from its impure status? That's the opinion of Rav Meir. Man shamas lehaisvar Rav Meir. So we have the beginnings of Meir and the ends of Meir and the middles of Rabbanan. That's even more difficult to say. So to that we say that's to that we say that that's fine. You could do that. In Reisha, the beginning and the end of the Mishnah is Rav Meir. The part that needs no prereq of making it moist, and the part that the malika could purify from its impurity, that's all the opinion of Rav Meir. The middle part that requires an egg amount, the volume of an egg, to contaminate food or drink, the size of an egg, that's going to be the opinion of the Rabbanim. So according to Rav Meir, we still hold strong that even right now, when you're holding the carcass of the kosher bird, if that olive's worth touches food or drink, it will cause impurity. And the rabbis will argue that, say, no, it needs an egg's worth, an egg's amount, not an olive's amount.
If you're holding the carcass of an unslaughtered bird, does that mean the bird's alive or dead?
Dead.
But it's not slaughtered.
It died.
It just died.
Or you did an improper shechita.
Okay.
Or it died. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Continuing. Almost done with the hard part. So, Amar le Rav Hamul Rabbi Zera. Okay. Lo tesev akaref ad amar se'amilsa. Don't sit down. Literally means like don't go down on your legs. I mean, don't sit down until you explain to me the following matter. You better stay where you are until you explain to me something. So, Nevelas of Tahar, the Reb Meir. Okay, so now, a nevelas oftar. Once again, a carcass of a kosher bird. According to Rav Meir, even before it's down your throat, it has very stringent levels of impurity. So, according to Rav Meir, monin la rishon v'sheni, o ein monin rishon v'sheni. How strict are we going to go? So, do you consider it right now like a status 1 and a status 2 level of impurity, since it will eventually be able to contaminate your clothing, and you, even right now, can have that high level of impurity, or no? Oh, ain't monin rishon mashena. You won't go that far to say it's going to have that status of impurity. So Amarle, the response was called hechad demetame adam b'maga monin bo rishon masheni. Called hechad demetame adam b'maga ain't monin bo rishon masheni. It depends. When it's contaminating the person, it's going to have a status of a first degree level of tumah. But as long as it's not contaminating the person, so then, meaning as long as it's not in your throat, it's not going to have that high level of impurity, and therefore it's going to be limited into what it could contaminate. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah, and since this carcass of a kosher bird, until you swallow it, it doesn't contaminate a person by touching it, so it's not going to have that status of a first or second degree level of impurity. Sorry, I made a mistake. Not that it doesn't have that status; it can't cause others to be a rishon v'sheni. Not that it itself cannot contaminate a person. We're not arguing on that. The question is, when it touches something, can it make that a first degree or second degree of tumah? It for sure, it itself is limited. It can only contaminate food and drink. But since you can view it now as if it's already down your throat, and when it's down your throat, it's contaminating a person. So maybe do you say that if it touches something else, it'll be a novelty, that thing could become a rishon l'tumah, a first degree level of tumah? Or do you say no, it cannot attain that high status of impurity? That we say it cannot until it's actually causing you a high level of impurity, which only when you're swallowing it, it won't give other things that high level. Usually a rishon causes a sheni, or an avatuma, a dead body, causes me to be a rishon. I cause this to be a sheni. So this is somewhere in the middle. It itself is limited because it cannot contaminate a person right now. On the other hand, you're viewing it very, very, very a very high status, like only an olive's worth instead of an egg's worth. So can that cause someone else to be bumped up to like a first level of impurity? Yes or no? The answer is no. Okay. Yeah. One more hard part, and then it's gonna fly. So, bo minei Rabbi Zeir, certain fears a person has, fears of purity and impurity laws, is like one of the scary parts until you actually learn it properly. So, bo minei Rabbi Zeir, which only the Mishnah teaches. Bo minei Rabbi Zeir, mi Rabbi Ami bar Chia v'Amrila, Rabbi Avin bar Kan. So, Rabbi Zeira asked either from Rabbi Ami, the son of Rabbi Chia, or from Rabbi Avin, the son of Rabbi Kahana. Either way, the following Mishnah says, "Hadatnan chibure ochlin al yedei mashkin." So you have half a kazayas, half an olive's worth of a carcass at this end of the table, and you have another half at the other end or in your front yard, and in the middle there's water that's touching both of them at the same time. And it's only half an olive's worth, not a full olive's worth. So it touches both of them. So chibure ochel ayde mashkin, chibur letuma kala, ve'ein chibur letuma chamura. It can only cause a lower level of impurity and not a high level of impurity. So it'll cause impurity to food and drink. If now one of those if one of those pieces of carcass touches something, so you see it's not like a full olive's worth, it's half olive's worth, but it's connected by something. So that's enough to cause impurity to food and drink. But it's not enough to cause impurity to a person and vessel. So, yeah. So now, Monin bo rishon v'sheni or ain monin bo rishon v'sheni. So since it causes some level of impurity, so can that cause something else to be a rishon or a sheni? Can that cause something else to be a high level of impurity? So meaning, if it was a full kazayis, a full olive, then for sure, that's a high level of impurity. It'll cause something else to be a high level of impurity as well. Or rishon l'tumah. Here, right now, they're not connected, so it'll practically only cause food and drink to be impure. But since it is 2 halves of an olive, is that enough that you can view it on some level like a full olive? That right now it should give somebody else the status of a rishon l'tumah. So meaning when I cause a food or drink to be impure, that now is a sheni l'tumah, the second degree of tumah. That can't really cause impurity. But if I touch it, and now it has a status of a first degree tumah, then it can impurify food and drink. Right? So a person can impurify food and drink. But food and drink can't impurify a person. They can't even purify food or drink. So can this give it a status that it could cause impurity to food or drink? Yes or no? So Amarle, same answer. It depends. As long as it's contaminating the person, then it can cause others to be a first degree level of tumah. But as long as it's not causing impurity in this case, it cannot cause impurity to a person. It's only half an olive's worth. The most it could do is impurify food and drink. So therefore, basically the answer is what you would have thought originally. Just if right now you're limited in your impurification, so you can only cause food and drink to become impure, you cannot up those to a first degree of impurity. They're going to remain at a second degree of impurity. The only time you can up something to a first degree of impurity is when you're causing a person to be impure. Because a person is a first degree of impurity. So when you're causing impurity to a person, you can also cause other things to be a first degree of impurity. So, but if you're not causing a person to be a first degree of impurity, then you cannot cause other things like food and drink to be a first degree of impurity either. Okay, that concludes the purity and impurity. Now, yeah, good. So it says in the Mishnah, when both groups, the people in the front and the back, carrying the meat of the bull and the he-goats, once they leave the courtyard, then that causes them to be impure. Says the Gemara, how do I know? What's the source? We know, and even the Tanur says the Brisa, Omer, it says, now we're going back and forth between a bunch of different psukim. It says in one of the psukim, I think this is by Yom Kippur. We're going back and forth between Yom Kippur and the bull that we bring. Here it helps us out. 1 second. Yeah, I think it says by Yom Kippur. I think by Yom Kippur it says that you have to remove it. Yeah, the bull has to go outside of 3 camps. But here, in another place, it says it has to exit. No, the other way. Sorry. The bull that the congregation brings, if most of the congregation erroneously followed an erroneous ruling, they have to bring a bull. So that bull, it says there in that section, has to be brought out of 3 sections. Here by Yom Kippur, it says you have to bring out of 1 camp. Which one is it? It means like this. That it means, of course, you burn all these burned bulls, all have the same rule. They're all compared to each other. We learned this earlier on the 39th page. Of course, they all have to be burnt outside of 3 camps. However, once it leaves one of the camps, then it's going to impurify your clothing. So once you've left the courtyard, so then it'll cause impurity to the clothing. But you have to burn it outside of Yerushalayim. So, yeah. So now, V'hi gufe minalan. So where do I know this from? The Tanur Rabbanan V'hotzi has called aparel michutz lamachana. This is by the Kohen Gadol that makes a mistake erroneously. He has to bring, I think we have 2 opinions, him and the congregation. Let's say he has to bring the bull. the special burnt bull, only 4 burnt bulls. One of the 4 burnt bulls, he has to bring it el michutz lamachane, outside assembly, outside of one camp. So one sec, what does that mean outside the camp? Chutz l'shalosh machanos, outside of everything, outside of Yerushalayim, atomer. Atomer chutz l'shalosh machanos, or ela chutz machana achas, or maybe just outside the courtyard. So says the Gemara, outside the courtyard. So kisho omer b'para eda, when it's referring to the bull that the community brings, when they made a mistake, what does it say? It says michutz lamachana. There it says you got to bring the bull outside of the camp. Now that's extraneous. That's superfluous. She'ein tzarich lomar shari kar amar already says parnamar kasha sarfas a parishan, like you burnt the first one, which is outside the camp. So why did it say outside the camp? Lite lo machane shniya, to tell you it has to go outside of a second camp. Okay, but kishu omer michutz lamachane, the deshin, when it says outside the camp, when it's referring to the deshin, the ashes that you got to bring, that's also superfluous. Why? She'ein tzarich lomar, that's unnecessary. Sharei kvar namar, it says al shefach hadash nisare, you have to burn it. Literally, I think of the sloping of the ashes has to be burnt. So you already know it has to be burnt outside. So why did it mention that? Litin lo machanesh shlishas, to teach you that you have to burn these bulls outside of all 3 camps. So we have basically our contradiction. Is it 1 camp or 3 camps? To which we're saying that it goes like this. We have extra words that tell us it has to be outside of all 3 camps. There's another exposition that says all burnt bulls have the same halacha. However, when it says outside of 1 camp, it means once you leave 1 camp, once you leave the courtyard, so right then and there, it'll cause impurity. So it causes impurity to your clothing once you left 1 of the camps, but you only have to burn it. You have to burn it outside of 3 camps. Yeah. Okay. Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah argues, and he says only the people that are burning it become impure. People carrying it don't become impure. He argues, and he says only the ones that are actually, they only become impure once most of the animal gets burnt, but not when you're carrying it. So Rabbi Shimon, what do you do with these verses? Rabbi Shimon, what do you do with the fact that it says outside of 1 camp, which means that once you've exited, it now causes impurity. According to you, it only causes impurity once you're burning it, and most of it has been burned. So he says you need this verse for the following brayso. Rabbi Eliezer Omer says, he says, Nemarkan chutz l'machane v'nemer laholon, chutz l'machane malaholon, chutz l'shalosh machanos, afkan chutz l'shalosh machanos. So Rabbi Eliezer learned this for Gzeira Shava, that it says by the bull of Yom Kippur, it says outside of the camp. By Para Aduma, it says outside of the camp. So just like Malaholon by the burnt bulls, you have to bring it outside of the 3 camps. Malaholon chutz l'shalosh machanos. Afkan chutz l'shalosh machanos. So to here by the just like by Yom Kippur, it's outside of the 3 camps. So to here by the burnt bulls, it's also outside of the 3 camps. So he just uses those words for Gzeira Shava. Now he says, Mala Holon, the Mizracha Shel Yerushalayim. The Para Aduma, you have to burn it where? To the east of Yerushalayim. So, turn to the next page. Afkan, the Yom Kippur bull, also has to be burnt east of Yerushalayim. That's what he uses the Gzeira Shava for, to compare both of these sections. Has to be outside of 3 camps. That you learn from Yom Kippur to the burnt bulls. And back from the burnt bulls to Yom Kippur, that you have to burn it on the east of Yerushalayim. According to the Rabbanon, who don't have this Gzeira Shava to teach you, it has to be to the east. So where do you burn it? Which side of Yerushalayim? It has to be outside, but where? Kidatanya, like the following brayso says, where do you burn them? To the north of Yerushalayim. Chutz l'shalosh machanos. Has to be to the north. Why? So Rashi says all the things of the sin offering are done to the north, which usually means the north of the altar. Meaning when you're doing it, right where the altar is here, right to the north of the altar. However, However, we're using that also to say it has to be burnt to the north of Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yosef, the Omer, he says, you know where you burn it? The same way you burn the ashes, a base hadeshin nisrafim. Yeah, you have to first put the ashes, and then you could burn it there. Amar Rava, man tana de polig Allah Rabbi Yosef. Who is the author of who is the Tanaic opinion that argues on Rabbi Yosef Glili and says that you do not need to put ashes first before you burn the three bowls? So we're going to see now there's going to be different places where you burn. So the Tanya al shafak hadeshin yisari she heisham deshin. The first opinion says when it says in the Torah that you got to burn these al shafak hadeshin, it means it has to be burnt in a place where the ashes are burnt. You got to put the ashes down. Now it's called the place of the burning of the ashes. Then you can burn these bowls. But one who argues is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer shehei mekomo mishupach. It doesn't mean where the ashes are placed. It means it has to be a place that's slanted. That's all it means. So, Amar le Abaye, maybe they're not arguing about this. Abaye says no. Maybe in this brisa, everyone agrees you have to put the ashes down first. The only disagreement is, does it have to be a slanted place or not? So either we say that there's two opinions, at least two opinions. Do you burn the animal in the same place where the ashes are burned? Or maybe it's to say it better. Do you have to place ashes there first? That it's called the place where the ashes are placed. I don't know if it's the exact same place where the ashes are burnt outside the temple. It might just be just a requirement they have to place the ashes down. So maybe that's two opinions in the brisa. How do you understand the verse shafach hadeshin? Maybe they disagree. Does it mean where the ashes are placed, or does it mean it has to be slanted? Abaye says no. Maybe everyone agrees in this brisa that you have to place it in the ashes first. They just disagree. Does it have to be slanted or not? Okay. It has to go on a slant so that it can get poured down, I think. When you burn the ashes, I know the ashes fall down. That the ashes have to go down towards, I guess, some kind of sewage system. I don't know exactly. They can't remain there. It has to be going down. So how's it going to go down? When you burn that, how's it go down? That's interesting. How the ash is going to roll down if it's not? Yeah, good question. Okay. Taner Rabbanan says the brisa hasore, the one who burns these burnt bulls, metame begadim. Now, the one who burns them, below hamatzis or not the one who starts the fire. Below hamatzis or. The next word's got to be taken out. They don't really fit. Below hamatzis or, not the one who ignites the fire. Below hamistader samaracha. And not the one who organizes the pyre, puts the wood together. So, you're making a barbecue. So one friend collects the wood, one friend knows how to start the fire. Those guys are not the ones that clothing gets burnt. So, so fine. Only the one who's burning. Now, who's the one who's burning? The Ezu Asorif, even one who's helping while it's being consumed, that guy is also going to have his clothing become impure. You would have thought that even when it's all ashes, it'll still cause impurity on your clothing. Talmud or no? Only them, the animals. When you burn the animals, as long as they're animals, once they're ashes, they're no longer animals. So osam metama begadim umishanas and efer emetama begadim. Once they become already ashes, they no longer are going to cause impurity on your clothing. Rabbi Shimon Omer, osam metama begadim. He says they impurify your clothing; they'll cause impurity. However, nitach habasar ein metama begadim. Once the meat gets it's already loses its form or gets decomposed, that's not going to impurify the clothing. Well, that sounds very similar. They're both no longer the animal, and they're not going to cause impurity. So, Mai Beinayu, what's the difference between these two opinions? Amarava Ike Beinayu the Shavya Harucha. That it's the point in time where it loses its form, and so to speak, it's more decomposed, but it's not yet ashes. So according to the first opinion, it'll still cause impurity. It's not ashes. According to the second opinion, though, it's already right now decomposed, it loses its form. So at that point already, it's not ashes yet, but it's already pretty decomposed. That'll cause impurity. Okay, Hajjan school Yom. Let's go for a few more minutes. Yeah, let's keep going. Okay. So there is a violation of bringing sacrifices outside the temple. So you have to slaughter. Everything has to be done inside. So what happens if you do outside? Hashochet, one who slaughters the hamala and brings up bachutz outside. There's going to be chayiv al shchita, the chayiv al hahala is going to be liable for slaughtering outside and for bringing up the sacrifice outside the temple. So now, Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer, shachad bifnim, if you slaughter inside, but you bring up outside the hahala bachutz chayiv, that you're still going to be liable. I believe you're chayiv karis. Yeah, chayiv karis. Yeah, chayiv karis both of them. So shachad bachutz. What about the other way? Sorry. Shachad bachutz, though, he says if you slaughter it outside and you bring it up outside v'hala bachutz, then you're patur. Now, why? Let's think about it. Very logical thing. Once you slaughter it outside, it becomes invalid. So you're bringing up now an invalid sacrifice outside. You have to know, what is the first thing you're going to say about that? It's a very good point. You've invalidated it once you slaughtered it outside. So now you're bringing up an invalid offering. Maybe the whole violation, according to him, is when you bring up a valid offering outside, not an invalid offering outside. So shelo hella aladavar pasal. Oh, so amrulo, they said back to him, af hashochet difnim, even one who slaughters inside, umala b'chutz kevon sheotziu paslo. The Chama said back to him, he said, not only that, meaning we're going to argue on you, even when you slaughter inside, the second you remove that animal outside, that's invalidation. You can't bring it outside that area. So, and now you want to bring it up, so you've also brought up something invalid, but you can't remove it outside the courtyard.
I think you're proving it wrong. If you're right, even if you strike it, then you take it out.
It should still be wrong. Oh, good. Obviously, you're wrong. Right. Meaning he's saying according to thank you. According to Reb Shimon, if you're right that you can't bring up something invalid, then how come you say that when you shecht it inside and bring it up outside, that is going to be a violation? The second you shechted it inside and removed it outside, right there it gets invalidation. And once it's invalid, and then you go bring it up outside, that's also bringing up something which is invalid. So basically, they're pinning Rabbi Shimon. You have to figure out a differentiation. You differentiate between shechting outside, which is invalid, and then bringing it up, which does not get you kares, to shechting it inside, removing it outside, which is also invalidation. And when you bring that up, you will get kares. So according to you, what's the difference? We don't hear a difference. All right, I think we'll stop here for now.